Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight from a secure facility where I've just completed an extraordinary briefing with energy security specialists and intelligence analysts regarding what may be the most consequential shift in global power dynamics since the oil crises of the 1970s. What I'm about to share with you represents a fundamental transformation in how nations project power and influence in the 21st century. We're no longer simply talking about armies and navies. We're examining how energy infrastructure has become the new battlefield where wars are fought and won without a single shot being fired. The information I'll present tonight comes from classified assessments by our intelligence community, combined with open source analysis of energy flows, pipeline networks, and strategic reserves that reveal a stunning reality. We are witnessing the weaponization of energy on a scale never before seen in human history. Over the next several minutes, I'll walk you through how Russia has transformed natural gas into a weapon of war, how China is systematically securing energy choke points across 3 continents, and why the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline represents far more than an act of sabotage. It marks the beginning of a new era in global conflict. This isn't theoretical. American families are paying the price for this energy warfare every time they fill up their gas tanks or receive their electricity bills. What's happening in energy markets today will determine which nations rise and which fall in the decades ahead. Global stage, O Grande Tabulero. In the secure briefing rooms where America's energy security is planned and protected, a sobering reality has emerged that challenges every assumption about modern warfare and economic stability. The traditional understanding of military power, measured in aircraft carriers, nuclear warheads, and standing armies, has been superseded by something far more pervasive and potentially devastating: control over energy infrastructure. As I review the latest intelligence assessments on global energy flows, one fact becomes unmistakably clear. We are witnessing the emergence of energy as the primary weapon of 21st century geopolitics. Nations that control energy production, transportation, and distribution now wield more influence over global affairs than those with the largest military budgets. The scope of this transformation extends far beyond simple supply and demand economics. What we're observing is the systematic militarization of energy infrastructure, where pipelines become strategic assets equivalent to military bases, and the ability to turn off another nation's electricity has become as powerful as a naval blockade. This shift has created new categories of vulnerability that traditional security frameworks were never designed to address. When a single pipeline explosion can trigger economic crisis across an entire continent, when cyber attacks on electrical grids can paralyze modern societies, and when control over lithium deposits determines technological supremacy, the very definition of national security requires fundamental reconsideration. The stakes could not be higher. Nations that fail to secure their energy independence face the prospect of becoming energy colonies subject to the political and economic dictates of those who control their power supplies. A seda o petróleo e o caos. The foundations of today's energy warfare can be traced back to decisions made in the aftermath of the Cold War, when Western leaders believed that economic interdependence would create unbreakable bonds of mutual interest that would prevent major power conflicts. The integration of Russian energy supplies into European economies was seen as the ultimate peace dividend, a guarantee that military confrontation would become economically impossible. This assumption proved to be one of the most catastrophic strategic miscalculations of the post-Cold War era. Rather than creating mutual dependence, the energy relationship between Russia and Europe created asymmetric vulnerability that Moscow has systematically exploited for geopolitical advantage. The transformation began gradually. Russia's development of state-controlled energy giants like Gazprom and Rosneft represented more than corporate consolidation. It marked the creation of economic weapons directly controlled by the Kremlin. These entities operated according to political rather than market logic, using energy contracts to reward allies and punish adversaries. Now we come to the most critical part of this assessment. The 2006 gas crisis with Ukraine provided the first demonstration of how Russia intended to use energy as a geopolitical weapon. By cutting off gas supplies in the middle of winter, Moscow showed that it was willing to weaponize civilian energy needs for political ends, a precedent that would reshape European security calculations for the next 2 decades. The China factor adds another dimension to this historical evolution. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative represents the most ambitious energy infrastructure project in human history, designed not just to secure China's energy needs, but to create energy dependencies that can be leveraged for political influence across 3 continents. Current events layer intelligence reports from the past 72 hours reveal a dramatic acceleration in energy-related strategic activities across multiple theaters. European energy ministers held emergency consultations following detected anomalies in North Sea pipeline systems, while our satellite intelligence has identified unusual activity around critical energy infrastructure in the Middle East and Central Asia. The most concerning development involves what analysts are calling gray zone operations against energy infrastructure, activities that fall below the threshold of open warfare but systematically degrade energy security. These include cyber probes of electrical grid control systems, unusual submarine activity near undersea cables and pipelines, and coordinated information operations designed to create panic in energy markets. Recent intelligence indicates that Russian energy policy has evolved beyond simple supply manipulation to include what military analysts term energy siege warfare, the systematic targeting of energy infrastructure to create cascading economic and social disruption. The tactics extend beyond pipeline closures to include cyber attacks on distribution networks and psychological operations designed to amplify the economic impact of energy disruption. The element that nobody talks about but changes the entire picture is the emergence of China as a silent partner in Russia's energy warfare strategy. Through long-term energy contracts and infrastructure investments, Beijing has provided Moscow with alternative markets that reduce the economic costs of weaponizing energy supplies to Europe. In the renewable energy sector, we've documented Chinese efforts to corner global markets for critical minerals required for solar panels, wind turbines, and battery storage. This represents a strategic shift from controlling fossil fuel supplies to controlling the materials necessary for energy transition, a form of preemptive energy warfare aimed at the technologies of the future. Actors' internal motivations, United States energy strategy. From Washington's perspective, energy security has become inseparable from national security in ways that were inconceivable during the era of American energy dependence. The shale revolution has transformed the United States from a major energy importer to a potential energy superpower, creating new opportunities for energy diplomacy and strategic leverage. Our strategic calculus now centers on using energy abundance as a tool for strengthening alliances while reducing adversaries' abilities to weaponize energy dependence. Liquefied natural gas exports have become a cornerstone of American foreign policy, offering European allies an alternative to Russian energy while creating new revenue streams for American producers. Russian energy doctrine. For Moscow, energy represents the primary means of maintaining global relevance despite economic sanctions and military setbacks. Russian leadership understands that control over energy supplies provides more sustainable influence than military intervention, creating dependencies that are difficult to break even when political relationships deteriorate. The Kremlin's energy strategy extends beyond simple export revenues to encompass systematic efforts to prevent alternative energy supplies from reaching key markets. This includes everything from supporting instability in competing energy-producing regions to developing technologies that could disrupt renewable energy adoption. Chinese energy security calculations. Beijing's approach to energy security reflects their understanding that sustained economic growth depends on securing reliable energy supplies while reducing dependence on potentially hostile suppliers. Chinese energy strategy encompasses not just purchasing agreements, but strategic investments in production facilities, transportation infrastructure, and alternative energy technologies. The Chinese concept of energy security extends to controlling the entire supply chain from raw materials to finished energy products, creating resilience against potential sanctions or supply disruptions while building leverage over other nations' energy systems. European energy dilemma. European energy policy faces the fundamental challenge of balancing economic competitiveness with security independence. Decades of industrial development based on cheap Russian energy have created structural dependencies that cannot be rapidly reversed without significant economic disruption. Strategic conflict areas. Critical infrastructure vulnerabilities. The transformation of energy infrastructure into military targets has created unprecedented vulnerabilities in modern societies. Undersea pipelines, electrical transmission networks, and liquefied natural gas terminals represent high-value targets that can be attacked through conventional, cyber, or hybrid means. Recent intelligence assessments identify over 200 critical energy infrastructure points whose disruption could trigger cascading failures across multiple national economies. These vulnerabilities are being systematically mapped by adversaries who understand that energy warfare offers greater impact than traditional military operations. Pipeline politics and underwater battlefields. This is where the real breakdown begins. The Nord Stream pipeline explosions represent a watershed moment in energy warfare, demonstrating that even the most heavily defended energy infrastructure remains vulnerable to determined attackers. The incident revealed gaps in maritime security that adversaries have undoubtedly noted for future operations. The investigation into Nord Stream has exposed the challenges of attribution in underwater operations, where state and non-state actors can conduct operations with plausible deniability. This creates a new category of strategic threat where energy infrastructure becomes a target for covert operations designed to reshape geopolitical relationships. Renewable energy choke points. The transition to renewable energy has created new categories of strategic vulnerability centered on control over critical minerals and manufacturing capabilities. China's dominance in solar panel production, wind turbine manufacturing, and battery technology creates potential choke points that could be weaponized during future conflicts. Financial energy warfare. Energy markets have become battlefields for economic warfare, where speculation, manipulation, and coordinated trading activities can create price volatility that serves geopolitical objectives. The integration of energy derivatives markets with broader financial systems means that energy warfare now extends into monetary policy and currency stability. O mundo multipolar. The emergence of energy warfare as a primary tool of geopolitical competition has accelerated the transition from American hegemony to a multipolar world where energy producers and consumers form competing blocs based on supply relationships rather than ideological alignment. Unlike previous great power transitions, this realignment is happening in real time through energy markets, infrastructure investments, and supply chain modifications that create new facts on the ground faster than diplomatic institutions can adapt. Traditional alliances are being tested as energy needs create incentives for accommodation with authoritarian energy suppliers. The fragmentation of global energy systems into competing spheres of influence threatens to undermine the efficiency gains that made modern industrial civilization possible. As energy security concerns override economic optimization, we're witnessing the emergence of parallel energy systems that serve political rather than market logic. The factor that nobody discusses but transforms the entire equation is the role of non-state actors in energy warfare. Multinational energy corporations, environmental activists, and financial institutions have become strategic assets that can be leveraged by state actors to achieve political objectives through seemingly commercial activities. The implications extend beyond immediate energy supplies to include questions of technological development, industrial competitiveness, and societal resilience. Nations that cannot secure reliable energy supplies will find themselves unable to compete in advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence development, or military modernization. For democratic societies, this presents the fundamental challenge of maintaining open markets and competitive energy systems while defending against adversaries who use state control over energy as a weapon of war. A pergunta que fica. As we confront this new era of energy warfare, the fundamental question facing democratic nations is whether we can maintain the energy abundance necessary for economic growth and military strength while reducing vulnerabilities to energy weaponization by authoritarian regimes. The answer will determine more than energy policy. It will shape the economic foundations of democratic society in the 21st century. The choices we make about energy infrastructure, supply diversification, and strategic reserves will echo through decades of international relations and domestic prosperity. This is not a challenge that market forces alone can address. It requires the kind of coordinated strategic planning among democratic nations that characterized our most successful Cold War initiatives, adapted for an era where energy infrastructure has become as strategically important as nuclear weapons. The stakes extend beyond immediate energy security to encompass the fundamental question of whether democratic societies can maintain their technological and economic advantages when authoritarian regimes control the energy resources that power modern civilization. The future of freedom may well depend on the outcome of these energy wars. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.